everyone. It's right at the time of our start time for our webinar, so we'll go ahead and get started. I just wanted to welcome everyone. My name is Sierra, and I serve on the marketing team here at Recast, and I just wanted to thank you for joining us for our Zero Trust webinar here today with Sami Laiho, which I'm sure is the person that you all registered for. He will be talking today about privileged access management and just giving more tips and tools about how you can move closer to a zero trust environment. And then after that, we have Marty Miller, which is the senior manager for solution engineering here at Recast. I'm sure we all know him as well. And he will be giving everyone a first look into our new solution called Privilege Manager at the end. And so just a few housekeeping things before we get started here. We will be recording the webinar, just so everyone knows, and you will receive a webinar recording towards the end of the week this week. And if you have any questions that you may have, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. You can submit any questions that you have there, and Marty and Sami will be answering questions towards the end of our webinar today. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sami, and he'll get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Super happy to see a big crowd like this. I am broadcasting this from Helsinki, Finland, and I saw someone on the chat mentioning that you're sending cold greetings from somewhere. I would want to challenge that. But anyway, so I'm a Microsoft MVP from Finland, and I've been doing IT stuff for more than half of my life, for about 26 years. Actually, oh my God, 27 years. I've specialized in getting rid of admin rights for companies for 20 years now. So I started in 2002, being very alone with this topic, no one really supporting me. And we've gone far away from that, but still today, actually this year, I've already taken away about 1 million endpoints of admin rights. And for example, Microsoft themselves still have 140,000 local admins. So it's not a kind of a solved thing. As many who have done it already, they are wondering why are we talking about this? Why is this such a big business currently? That's because it's still a problem. To be honest, I'm a Microsoft MVP in the core operating system, which means that I actually work with the product team on Windows. But I've been doing security for about 7-8 years now, mostly, and especially during the last 2-3 years, I've been more into consulting. And I hope I can kind of share you some details on how I actually sell these solutions, or I would call them concepts. First of all, one thing that everyone's talking about currently is zero trust. And zero trust has a very negative sound to it and a negative vibe to it. And I think has a very bad name. Security is 25% technology and about 75% of psychology. And it's all about how you sell these things. So let's try to keep this in a little different note on how to actually sell this good concept without making it sound like it's the security or the no department that's telling you what you cannot do. And we try to actually give you a solution that allows you to do things. Zero trust is a concept of 3 different principles. And we have the first principle, or the first concept, of verify explicitly, meaning that we always MFA. You can just cutting a few corners here, but basically strong authentication everywhere, whether it's internal networks or outside in the cafeteria, whatever, always strong authentication. Actually, the concept of getting rid of what are known as internal networks is at the core of zero trust. Assume breach. I work for TrueSec. I'm the Chief Research Officer for TrueSec, which means I have a huge database of security operations centers data meaning that I have statistics on how people actually operate. I know what's happening out there. And we, as many others, have completely changed in the last few years to actually just assume breach. We're not trying to anymore say that we will prevent you from being breached. We will help you to try to minimize the impact when that breach happens. So we assume breach. And then the third one is principle of least privilege. Windows NT 3.1, the first NT written by Dave Cutler, that user manual had a statement in it, and that said that in Windows, there is no security if you log on as an admin. So if you try to enforce any kind of security, the group policy documentation says that it can only enforce settings for limited users. So the whole security subsystem was never built to withstand the use of admin rights. So it's never supposed to work. If you're trying to do that, you're just fighting against the windmills. So the first thing you should know is that there are two core rules for Windows security. If we're talking about computers outside of a data center, you cannot have security in Windows unless you have BitLocker and no admin rights. So BitLocker meaning hard disk encryption. Remember, that's not to encrypt your data. That's very old school thinking that BitLocker is about data encryption. It's about integrity. It keeps your configuration intact. Admin rights is even more fundamental because that rule has been in place 13 years before that rule for BitLocker was put in place. Now, we have gone through different ages, even through my career. When I started my career, we were living in this, what I call the admin epoch. And that admin epoch, meaning that basically everyone was an admin. Anyone installs whatever you want. There's no limits on what you can do with your computer. I actually tweeted about a few months ago. I tweeted a tweet where I said that admin rights are not human rights, because that's what people seem to think. I was doing this. My funniest job ever is that I get to be a scapegoat for money. So companies pay me to stand in front of an audience where the company has already removed all the admin rights, and the only reason why I'm standing on that podium is because they hire me to say that it was my idea. It's easier to hate me as an external consultant than hate the IT department. But people are very, very protective of their rights. You're removing something. That sounds very negative. So let's try to change that. I was just doing this for a company where 400 people were sitting in an auditorium, and one person got really, really upset, and he was really angry at me, and he stood up from his chair and he started yelling at me. You make this sound like we can't do anything with our computers but work. Yeah, kind of like company computer is supposed to actually do work with it. Just finished an allow listing project for a medical company, and their top 5 most used applications, 2 line of business applications. The 3 other ones were 3D Pony Simulator, Movie Star Planet, and Roblox. So honestly, there was really no control, and many companies still don't have it. Now, we're kind of currently living in this non-admin epoch where mostly office users, end users, they don't have admin rights that much. Many we've got them back during the pandemic. What they don't currently usually kind of like have in scope for this project is developers and IT people, although they are the most dangerous ones. So we should get those on board as well. We're trying to move towards this app control epoch, meaning that we actually start to not only control how you run things, how privileged you run things, but also what you run. So going from this old traditional antivirus world into this allow listing world, where we proactively say that we're going to run these 600 different applications instead of trying to find 1 million bad things per day, which is currently the amount of malware that we have. We have about 1 million pieces of malware found per day, which 96% of only appear once. So trust me, the laziest option is get rid of admin rights, which is a prerequisite for doing allow listing. Now, like I said in the beginning, there are, of course, many security reasons for not being an admin, but there are a lot of benefits to it. It's really hard to sell people security stuff if you only think about how they will protect you against bad things, because people don't assume that they are hit by bad things. So why would they care? They are listening to your rules and they're behaving. So why would they care? They know not to do bad things. Now, if we think about how to convince developers, for example, or if we need to convince management, we need to convince admins themselves, then I think the approach should be a little bit different. And what I always try to tell people is what they gain by doing this. I haven't logged on to my own workstations as an admin since 2002. That's 20 years now. And I should get a pin or something, a badge or something for it that I've done over 20 years without logging onto my computer as an admin. I would never do that. And it's never been about security. I stopped using it because I was so fed up that Windows needed to be installed every 6 to 12 months because Windows just works better when you reinstall. Now, the best thing I've seen in a long time was that we have an MVP group and got friends in that group, and we're chatting in a chat, and then one person comes in and says, my Windows did it again. I'm gonna buy a freaking Mac. And then a fellow MVP of mine takes the stage. You don't have to. Just obey Sami's order. Stop logging on as an admin. You don't need a Mac. I was so proud of myself that I had convinced him. And he said, yes, my kids at home, they do this as well. I've taught them how to log on. They all use my admin finger trick, where you just, when you have to use your admin rights, you set them up on 2 different fingerprints, for example. But that's a home user thing, and that might be doable. That's not an enterprise solution in that sense. Now, we'll talk about the problematics in that in a little bit later. So what do you get when you're not logging in as an admin? Why would I never ever want to be an admin? I will do whatever it takes to not be an admin on my machine because it breaks things and I don't want to fix things. I need them to work. This is my work. I need my computer to work. I don't want to be interrupted. I want to keep working. It's a tool for me. You get better performance because you write less garbage into your disk. Your computer keeps cleaner, stays cleaner. Less tickets. You have less problems on your computer when you don't log on as an admin. I have some figures on that later on. Less reimaging. You don't have to reinstall your machine. I reinstalled my machine in 2002. I had been doing it every 6 to 12 months. And then after removing admin rights, the next time I reinstalled was in January 2007. 5 years, I was happy with the performance the whole time. So in my head, that's 5 to 10 less reinstallations during that time. I'm lazy. I don't want to work if I don't have to. That's why I would never ever be an admin on my machine. More productive users, less interruptions, more time to work because you need less time for troubleshooting. Less malware. That's a great addition, of course. Malware doesn't infect, especially other computers, as easily. When I go to any hacking conference, I'm not convinced if someone shows me a demo with admin rights because that's not the way Windows is supposed to work. That is insecure by design. But show me demos where you use limited user access and then gain admin access or something like that. That's where I get impressed. You get to be lazier. The most common thing I see is that people think that if they don't have admin rights, they have to call service desk constantly because they can't fix their own computers. This is nonsense, okay? The reality is that if you don't have admin rights, you can't break your computer. And that's why we get so much less tickets when we get rid of admin rights, as people mostly think that you get more tickets because people can't do things themselves. They have to call service desk all the time. That is not true. None of the statistics would prove that. They prove that we get less tickets in an environment where you don't give people admin rights. This is from a few slides I did for an executive briefing. I thought that it's again a little bit different tone than maybe the traditional IT admin, security admin stuff. So why do you need to do it? So this is why we can't let you be admins if you're end users. Because it changes the risk from loss of one user's assets to losing the whole company operations. Now, if you get ransomware on your machine, and you will at some point get some sort of malware at least, but if you get ransomware, it will encrypt your data. That's really hard to defend against, because if I want to block, well, I actually know how to block all ransomware. Well, I thought so, because now we have a new destructive ransomware that just came out. But the traditional ransomware, one way to block it is just change everyone's My Documents into read-only. I think we all get the point that that's a little bit counterproductive. You need to be able to write into your own files. So you will be, that ransomware will encrypt your files, but can it go laterally to the next computer? That depends on how much weapons you give it access to. And if you give it admin rights, it can take Mimikatz. It can start shooting with all weapons at all directions. So that's the biggest thing. Because it allows malicious tools to operate on Windows, like I just said, because it prevents the company from controlling the computer settings. A data group policy doesn't work. Any admin can remove all policies. Policies are not there. Even the documentation says it's not against admins. Because it prevents the company from controlling the because it allows identity theft. Every local admin has a really cool privilege called impersonate a client after authentication, which means if you come on a machine where I am on if you log on to a machine where I'm an admin, I can take your identity, read your email, do whatever I want, because I have the impersonate a client after logon privilege. Because it allows shadow IT. If you have an admin on a box, you will have as many IT departments as you have boxes. So what are the two most important security controls today? If you look at CIS, for example, when they list 18 most important security controls, number 1, number 2, up-to-date hardware inventory, up-to-date software inventory. You cannot secure unless you know what to secure. Now, if you give admin rights to people, you lost your inventory, okay? At least up-to-dateness of your inventory. Well, then the fancy new Zero Trust name, of course, this is part of Zero Trust. There are reasons why you should not want to be an admin. I mean, everyone should get yourself brainwashed into being like me. Don't want to be admins. I don't understand why you need more privileges. It's kind of like mostly people, at least when you're working somewhere and people give you like, do you want to have the key for all the server rooms? And you would think like, actually, I understand that the more keys I have, the more responsibilities I have. There would be some sort of self-protection for your free time. This is the same thing. If you want to have free time, don't be an admin on your machine, okay? Because it patches more vulnerability than patching. Let's talk about that in just a second a little bit more. Because what happened in 2001, based on trend analytics, based on statistics, is that for the first time, compared to times before 2021, actually now the #1 attack vector for the initial attack into a company was actually more probable to be based on a vulnerability instead of phishing. For many, many years, the first attack vector has always been phishing. Now it's vulnerabilities. And this means that you have to mitigate vulnerabilities. We've changed our rules. Like nowadays for our customers, if you have a public facing service, it needs to be patched in 2 days. That's the absolute maximum that is allowed. Usually a lot faster, hopefully. As many companies would have, like in general, a patching time would be like 14 days or something for other patches, but those that are publicly facing. The time it takes from the initial contact by the attacker to full compromise of the environment, on average, is 2 hours, which means that your XDR, EDR solutions, they have the APIs that you're talking to and using through your tools in Azure, for example, Windows Defender, they are not fast enough to catch that threat before it's there. Which means your job as a security professional is to slow down that time it takes for the complete breach. You fight to make that 2 hours be extended, and your most important thing there is to get rid of admin rights. Okay? If you think about only Microsoft, then Microsoft patches more than 100 vulnerabilities per month. That was more than 1,200 last year and the previous year. So there's more than 100 per month average. This means that you got a lot of patching to do. And I would say that if you think about what you can choose, is you could choose the reactive, which is patch as fast as you can, or the proactive one where you limit the writes that actually mitigates most of these. If we look at a laptop that's traveling around the world, for example, like a general endpoint, the most common ways of a malware to actually get into that system is still today is email or the browser somehow. Although phishing itself is not anymore the biggest one, then if we talk about like internet browsing and email, that still beats those statistics. And this means that there's an insanely good statistic about removing admin rights, which was that in the previous years, the few previous years, more than 56% and up to about 95% of all vulnerabilities would be mitigated by removing admin rights. But even crazier was that the Office products for 2020, for example, there were 100% of the vulnerabilities towards Office, including Outlook, would be mitigated by removing admin rights. 100% of vulnerabilities towards the Chrome browser or Edge browser in this case as well would be mitigated by removing those rights. That's an insanely good patching. This means that patching is like anti-malware, so it's reactive and trying to keep up, and removing admin rights is like proactive, keeping you out of trouble. So let's put these neck to neck. If you statistically think about it, let's play king of CISOs, okay? In the left-hand corner, we have company 1, which is the world's best in patching. Or honestly, in 2 days, all public-facing things are patched. In a matter of a few days, let's say everything that's critical is patched, and they are completely patched in that next month. I mean, they will completely patch everything before we get the next Patch Tuesday from Microsoft, for example. But they allow their users to be admins. Then on the right-hand side here, we have company 2. They don't patch at all. They just gave up. This sucks. And they just gave up on the whole concept of patching, but they don't have any admin rights. Now, statistically, company number 2 is more safe or more secure than company 1. Because 56% of those vulnerabilities would be mitigated by removing admin rights. In 2 weeks' time, that other company will have, on average, 50 different vulnerabilities in their environment, and company 2 will have less. So statistically, that's the safer option. I would never ever say that you shouldn't patch, because of course servers, workstations, they honestly are protected by protecting the endpoints that access them, and then from the kind of the backside are the ports. So I would never ever say that you shouldn't do it. I have a customer in Denmark that had some thousands of machines, and as said, statistics from them, 75% decrease in the amount of tickets, making it actually very cheap, as most people say that these are like expensive solutions. No, they're not. They're actually dirt cheap. I have a US customer with a lot of computers in Germany as well, and they have 35,000, 36,000 computers, and they re-imaged a lot of computers. That's the best feedback I ever gotten, was when their service desk people called me and said, Sami, thanks to your project, we were able to buy a shorter desk for the service desk. Because they used to have lines of these re-imaged laptops there. But now, after removing admin rights, they have 65% less re-imaging, which means that they can buy a shorter desk for their service desk. Now they have a room for a fridge, ping pong table, whatever. Just as we think about, the less you can touch your computer, the less you have rights to your computer, the better it runs. Now, this is more than great example, because this is a Azure data center container. 2 of these were dumped into the ocean, and they were there 10 meters below the ocean, 30 feet below the ocean surface, and they kept them there for 2 years. in 2 years, these computers had 9% less errors than the ones that were on the surface. Why? Most people would assume it's because of cooling, but it's not. They had 9% less errors because people weren't able to touch them. What I face a lot is developers telling me that, but Sami, there are just some things in Windows you can't do without admin rights. And I would say I call garbage. That's not true. You can check this link out. That has a list that you can then send them, because this is a list where it tells you how to build certified applications for the Windows desktop. It's like a 12-step program. There's honestly 12 steps in building correct apps for Windows. Data goes into program data for all users, into C users, username app data, divided by the integrity levels into local or local low. And binary goes to program files. If it's 64-bit, program files x86. If it's 32-bit, I mean, all the things that we hate software doing wrong, installing things into the user's container and all that stuff. So just show them that. It's honestly like 3 pages long. Read this and security would have no problems concerning this area of security. They don't. You install things like Minecraft on a computer, which is not an enterprise app. And what it does is it changes your program files Minecraft folder to have an access control list of everyone full control. Just wipes out Windows security. What the devs tell me that you cannot do certain things without admin rights, that's not true, because you can always install a driver. Drivers have more privileges than admins do. Build a driver. Why don't they want to do it? Because you need to learn how to program in C or C++. You can't do that on .NET because .NET runs code on user mode only, not in the kernel mode. More work. It's horrible. I don't want a job. It's so much hard work. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not an excuse, because you can build a driver. One thing I show my friends many times to convince them that they should be doing this as well is what I'll take is I'll actually take process monitor. This is called garbage-o-meter. What you do is you set up process monitor from sysinternals, and you set a filter that says that whenever there is an operation that ends in access denied, please show it on the screen. And then I let this run for a few hours, for example, without admin rights. And this is all the garbage that did not end up in your hard disk. Now, if you try to convince a developer and say that we can't let you be an admin because you would run silly stuff and potentially dangerous malware, I mean, they don't care. But if you tell them that if you take part in our new project, your SSD lives longer, it's the same thing, but just said in a very different way. So the idea is that the less you write to your SSD, the longer it lives. We all know that SSDs wear out by write operations. So if you don't have admin rights, you can't write garbage to your disk. Your SSDs live longer. Tempting. That sounds good. So how do we fix all of this? Well, we have different ways of doing it. And Microsoft has forever had this run as feature, secondary logon service. The problem is that it uses an API, it uses a function where it sends an API call, and that's in clear text. I've showed that at Ignite 2015. I had a session called Zero Admins, Zero Problems, and you can still find that online. And there's a demo on how you can use a tool called API Monitor, Apimon version 2, and you can use that to capture that username and password. So they're not secure. Plus, they have another problem, which is what's known as a dual identity problem, where we cannot elevate the user who is currently running the computer, but we have to use a secondary user. So we have a user. I'm fine with that, for example. On my machine, I can live with that. I know how to live with this, but many apps don't. And even more users don't. So the idea is that my local admin is called Homer from Simpsons. So Homer, if I open up I'm Sami Laiho, but if I open up my app as Homer, and then I want to save my document into my documents, it's Homer's documents, not my documents. So we have a dual identity problem. So that's another drawback to this. Many times when I tell people that this is what you should use to solve things, here are my solutions, this is my toolbox, this is what I use, and I end up in, can you just install Make Me Admin? I wouldn't recommend it for anyone, maybe some home users could try it, but I mean, it's very insecure because the concept is wrong. It changes your group membership to be an admin. And if you launch anything while you're an admin, everything runs as an admin. The potential of running a new process as an admin is way too big. So that's why I do not consider it to be an enterprise solution. What do we actually do to solve this? What I believe is that at the end of the day, what people are trying to get is that they want to have something that it's very secure, easy to use. Now, there is a rule in security nowadays that you have 3 different things in security. You have the security, you have usability, and you have cost. And you can only choose 2, you can't get 3. If you're trying to be a free and very secure one, it won't be that easy to use. If you want to build a free and easy to use one, it won't be that secure. If you want to build a secure and easy to use one, it won't be free. Sorry to say that. Sorry to break that news to you. Now, that means that what I really honestly believe that is the solution is that you should be moving from the old style of being an admin or a limited user when you log on to a machine and moving towards a world where only the process that requires the admin rights will be elevated, or only the task that requires admin rights will be elevated, so that we don't face the problem of you double-clicking something wrong during that time. Now, if you do that, then you're at a lot safer place, because the idea here is that the new processes that you just click. If you think about how malware gets in, you open Outlook, get an attachment, double click it, for example. You will not probably go through the ordeal of saving it, right-clicking it as an admin every time. You will keep clicking on things. And as long as you keep on clicking those things without adding yourself to the administrators group, then you don't have access to the weapons. Mimikatz won't work for lateral movement. When we had WannaCry, one of the biggest, first very big ransomware outbreaks, WannaCry would infect your computer even if you were not an admin. It would encrypt your data, but it would not laterally move. It used the SMP version 1 weakness on the computers, but it couldn't use that without admin rights. So this meant that although you wouldn't be able to block ransomware completely by not being an admin, you could contain it. You do not get on the news by having ransomware. Trust me, every big company gets ransomware. You don't get on the news. When you get on the news, that's because you're in a situation where your company got ransomed. Your operations are down, not just because of a single computer. So this helps you to contain that threat. Of course, if you don't want to combine better working computers, longer lifespan of SSDs, less interruptions for your work, less service desk tickets, that's, I would never do that myself. I think the best proof of my work is that I have never ever wanted to be an admin since I started, because life for me is so much easier. And I just want to have relaxed life. I'm lazy. I don't want to fix things. I don't want them to break. Now, there's of course another option that you just don't care about all of this and then you get ransomed. If you look at the numbers, these should kind of give you an idea that that might not be a very smart move. So we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions. There's a statistic that you won't hear many times, and I can tell you this. We don't have that much public data, but one thing that I can share with you, which I hope will scare you a little bit. When we had 160 breaches that we were fixing, we have one of the Europe's biggest incident response teams. And when we sent them out for fixing incidents, when they had 160 breaches in a year to investigate. Although we tell them the only way to keep your name clean is to go public and do it correctly. Don't try to do it like Uber or someone who was trying to hide it. What you do is you go public and you be very open. Out of those 160 cases, 3 decided to tell publicly that they were breached. If you follow my Twitter at Sami Laiho, hopefully you do, or you will, and you can see that every day I'll tweet about a ransomware case. Remember, for every 3 you see, there's 160 that you don't see. Costs are heavy, but that's my point. I hope you walk away with this with an idea of having a positive note of why you shouldn't want to be an admin and what might actually make people like it more. It's kind of like zero trust. It's just a bad word. I remember when once I started my career, I was teaching some nurses in hospitals, and I told them that your password needs to be difficult enough. And then a colleague of mine came to me and said, Sami, great talk. Don't do that mistake again. I was like, what mistake? You can't tell people that their passwords are difficult. You tell them they're strong. Because if you tell people that something's difficult, their brain already goes into this mode of, oh my God, I can't know this. I have to write this. This will make my life harder. So strong is a lot friendlier way of approaching the same thing. But hey, anyway, with that, I'm more than happy to pass on the torch to Marty.
Very good. I think I need you to stop sharing, and then I can share out as well.
Yep.
There we go. Perfect. All right. So today, one of the reasons, thank you, Sami, for all that information. That was amazing presentation. And I know there are some questions that have come in. After we talk a little bit about Privilege Manager, we will go ahead and take a look at those questions and we'll answer those. If you do have questions about Privilege Manager as we're talking through it as well, you can go ahead and ask that also. So what we are here today to do is introduce Privilege Manager. Like I said, my name is Marty from Recast. I'm the senior manager of solutions engineering, which means I get to talk to a bunch of nice people about product and all that kind of thing. So what we are going to just show here real quick is all of our products. And if you notice, we've got Privilege Manager right up here, and some of the things that can help with privileges with admin access. Now, if you've never used our products before, you are one of the few, and we're very happy to have you here. A lot of people have used the community tool at a point in their life. It's being used by something like 70,000 sysadmins right now. We also have the full suite of enterprise solutions. We're not going to talk about all of them, but I'll touch on them briefly. Right-click Tools Enterprise, which gives you some dashboards. You can take actions right from there. You can also find compliance of encryption. I heard BitLocker earlier. We can look at BitLocker encryption and give you information on that. Endpoint Insights will look into your environment, and we add some additional information that doesn't usually exist in Config Manager, such as warranty information. Things like how many monitors do I have and how are they connected, that kind of a thing. Shift left is integration into ServiceNow, so that you can actually do what we call kind of the right-click tools actions inside of ServiceNow right from that same pane of glass. And today we're going to be talking about Privilege Manager. Privilege Manager, it's going to be one of our newest products that's in that privilege management and zero trust space. Couple of things to mention about Privilege Manager. Provide simple, secure, centralized access rights in Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. Users can elevate to complete tasks that they need. We talked just briefly about, Sami talked a little bit about elevating the processes, right? And not elevating all the time, so that when you try and do something, you're not still elevated. That is how this works, essentially. When you run a process, it'll pop up that Windows user access control, ask you to log in, because you're not local admin, and you can use our tool basically to elevate yourself 3 different ways. The first way is by using a local account that is managed by Privilege Manager. You can also elevate a domain account, which is temporarily elevated by Privilege Manager, or you can also do it so that you actually get a code from Help Desk to elevate your account. The nice thing kind of about calling into Help Desk is that you have a little bit more control over, when things are happening, but also the users don't actually need to be connected to a network for this to happen. This uses our software to make that work, rather than trying to reach out to our server or to the servers that you have on your environment to elevate. Privilege Manager, you can manage access rights in a centralized manner, which is going to save time, is easy to manage on a global level, and something service desks can really benefit from. And we've talked about how security breaches are all about misuse of privileged credentials. So let's take a look at what Privilege Manager actually looks like. All right, so we're looking at my my Windows 11 desktop here, and if you notice, once I start doing some things, you'll notice that I'm not local admin on this device. Sami's message has gotten to me, but anyway, let's say, for example, I do actually need to do something on my computer. In this instance, let's say somebody told me that the website, when they go to it with a different browser, looks really weird, and I need to actually make sure that what they're saying is true. And it turns out they're using a browser I don't have installed on my computer, so I actually need to install that. We're using Brave just because it's kind of an easy install and goes quickly to show what that looks like. But when it happens, it's going to go ahead and offer me my user account control and ask me to log in. Well, I'm not a local admin on this device. I don't have an account I can really log into directly on this device. So I'm going to go ahead and use our Recast Privilege Manager right here. Tell it at this point I want to run with the local account, and then I'll just tell it why. I'm installing Brave. And when I hit yes, what it will do is it'll go ahead and it's going to go ahead and start that install process. Now, as this is happening, it essentially is going to go ahead and do those installations. And we'll take may take just a second here, but let's we'll give it just a second for that to finish. Here we go. So this is using my elevated temporary account to go ahead and install. And when it's done, what we're going to do next, because we are good users of our computer, and plus I don't necessarily need this browser to be here for the rest of my life, I am going to go ahead and go to my control panel, and I am going to go ahead and uninstall the same application. So we'll go to Programs and Features. We go to Brave. Now remember, I was administrator when I ran the installer a second ago. When I do the uninstall, because I'm no longer administrator, it's going to ask me to elevate myself again. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Recast Privilege Manager. Now this time I'm going to show running with a domain account. Just so you can see that it also works this way. I've actually found that there are some applications that maybe because they weren't written very well or whatever, would prefer that you run with a domain account rather than installing. Or if there's something that needs to be installed into your administrator, like into the actual profile, you actually have to run with the domain account. So I basically went ahead, and it's using my regular account, went ahead and put in my password. This is my non-administrator password. It connects to servers on your environment, and then will temporarily elevate me so that I can uninstall as well. All right, so that is how that works. Now, we did mention that there was actually a third way to install, to get local admin as well, and that was through the code that you can actually get. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you what that looks like if I were installing. So if I go here and go to the privilege manager again and say, I want to use an activation code. So basically it gives me a line here where I can put in that activation code. I'm going to go ahead and cancel right at the moment. And where you actually would get that activation code is connecting with your service desk, or some other way, connecting with whoever you needed to actually get that account, that code made for you. Where that exists, this is actually the privilege manager dashboard that exists in your environment. And there are a bunch of things you could do in here. You're setting up configurations. You can manage who is allowed to elevate themselves, either users or groups. And then you're also managing if you have temporary accounts that you want to use, or if you want to use the domain accounts. And we have reporting in here as well. We'll take a look at that in a second. But under service desk is where you can actually create an activation code. So how that works is it's looking in our environment. We put in the name of the computer that we're working on and hit search. When it finds it, we click the Find Temporary User Accounts. So this uses a temporary user account as well. But the nice thing about here is, remember, this is the one that doesn't need to have connection to anything in order to elevate. And so you can actually set how long you would like this code to be active. When you do something and close it, it still is going to, the next time you go into it, it's going to ask for that code, but the code will be active for however long you set here, all the way up to, multiple months. If you have somebody who is going off to a remote village to do some kind of whatever they need to do, you could potentially give them a code so they wouldn't have to call into the help desk or whatever in between times. Or you could even go back to just doing it for an hour if you wanted to. Essentially, then a reason gets entered here. And we're just going to say that it's installing software. And if I click on the create activation code, that will show us, this is exactly what an activation code looks like. So you could potentially read this off to your user, and it even gives you kind of the alphanumeric code here as well for these, so that you could go ahead and read that information out to them. Very good. And then that would just get entered in that where it said it asked for that activation code right there as well. Finally, we talked a little bit about reporting. So we can actually see a couple of different things. We're going to go ahead, and this will show when activation codes have been done, and we can actually sort. Let's go ahead and sort by what we could filter. Let's also, I think we can sort as well. So we'll go ahead and sort, and we can actually take a look. And of course, I wanted to sort the other way. But we can actually take a look at the things that we were just doing here just a little bit earlier with that, uninstalling Brave, installing, and then installing software right here as well. So you actually have information about when things are happening, as well as who is doing the activation and which account they used as well. So that is Privilege Manager in just kind of a brief, quick demonstration of how it works. And I think what we'll go ahead and do now is I'll pass it back to Sierra, and we can do, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A time.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into our Q&A, There will be a quick question that will pop up on your screen if you all can take a moment or two to answer that question.
Absolutely. While we're finishing this, something was just posted in the chat that said, this looks exactly like a product called Carillon. I assume this is based on their product. One of the things I neglected to mention, and I apologize for that, is that Centero, which created Carillon, is now a part of Recast software and has been for about a year. So this is some of the fruits of their labor. There will be more coming as well as we go into the future. So good question. Thank you. That actually helped me get back to something I missed. So good work.
Okay, so we're going to go into our Q&A session here, and we won't be able to answer all the questions, but we will be able to answer some of them. So the first question that we have is, do you know of any vulnerabilities with user installed software? Example, software that doesn't need UAC, aka Kindle Reader, for example. That would be a question for Sami.
Do you know of any vulnerabilities with user installed software that doesn't need UAC? I mean, if you're talking about what I assume you're talking about, is whether I know of applications that can bypass UAC. And yes, so there's malware, and there's actually tens of different UAC bypasses, mostly because Microsoft changed the UAC settings between Vista and Windows 7. Vista was hated because of the very strict UAC, although all the other operating system people were just fine with this, but Microsoft users went into a strike and said they will not use computers if they pop up annoying questions about security. And then Microsoft, the only time in my life I've been sad that Microsoft listened to us end users, they actually relaxed the settings in Windows 7, which means that no built-in code of Windows needs to adhere to the UAC. In that sense, they can always automatically elevate and bypass. So there's a ton of different UAC bypasses. So UAC is not a protection mechanism. Actually, Microsoft officially themselves nowadays state that UAC is not a security control.
Okay, thank you. And then this one will be for Marty. Does Privilege Manager require that Recast agent be installed and connected on the machine?
So great question. There is a Recast agent is required in order to connect back to our servers. That would, or to your on-prem servers. All of this exists on-prem. The two that it requires that for are where you elevate the temp admin one and when you are elevating your account to local admin. Remember I said the third one, which is that activation code, that one does not require a connection, although you would still need to have the agent installed because we need to make it so that the credential provider shows that you could use the Recast Privilege Manager in order to elevate yourself. So still needs to be installed, does not necessarily always need to be connected with that code.
Okay, thank you. This one will be for Sami again. This person said, you said a max of 2 days to patch a computer. Is this based on a standard? If so, what standard is that?
It's not really based on the standard. It's based on the TrueSec standard. Our company specializes in preventing cybercrime. So that's our standard.
Okay. And for Marty, will the reporting show what executable has been elevated?
Great question. Right now, that reporting does not show which executable has been elevated. I almost said executed. I guess that would work too. Does not show which one has been elevated. However, we have our ideas page at ideas.recastsoftware.com. Please feel free to add that as a feature request so that we can get that added into our product.
Okay, thank you. We'll have that be our last question and go ahead and wrap up for the day. And we were doing a giveaway for even attending our webinar today. We want to thank you guys for attending, and for the winners of that, you'll be receiving a $100 gift card to the Recast promo store. So you can go on there and just get exclusive merch that no one else has. And the winners of that are Dustin Kendall, Jaco Luoto, Helen Alexander, and Michael Knox. So all 4 of you, congratulations. You'll get an email to the email that you registered with, and you'll be able to go and get your promo items. So thank you for everyone for attending. We were happy to have you all. Thank you, Sami and Marty, to our presenters, and I hope everyone has a great day.